I feel like Wayne's World, and you're live in 3, 2.
We should do that.
Oh yeah, because you're a big Wayne's World fan. You just don't like Bill and Ted or something.
Yes. Well, I mean, I don't know if I would still call myself a big Wayne's World fan right now, but I certainly have been, and I wouldn't deny that. But I don't watch it every week anymore.
You used to watch it every week.
I don't know if I watched it every week, but I did watch it enough. One of my, I was going to say claim to fame. I don't know if this is really a claim to fame, but when I was in high school, I did once, at least once, tell the whole movie by heart,
No.
line for line. I could do the whole movie. I don't know how many times I watched it, but enough to know the whole movie by heart. And one time somebody called me on it late at night at a party. I went sleeping at the end of the party, and I just did the whole movie.
Wow. Okay, that's
At
really
least that's
impressive.
how it goes in my memory.
That's really impressive. I'm suitably impressed by that.
The lines are kind of easy, I think.
Yeah.
I
But
can't do that anymore, but I do know a lot of the lines.
I do think it's a very well constructed film. It's a good film.
Well, a very well
So
constructed film. Yes,
it
it's
is.
exactly what I thought when I was 13.
It's massively enjoyable. Today I've got Davina's mug.
I
Davina
still
Stitch
have the
mug.
same 4 mugs. I mean, my T-shirts. I haven't changed it. I mean, I'm still changing. I'm still new T-shirts every week still, but
What's
the
your
mug is
t-shirt
my
today?
Bordeaux rugby team.
Bordeaux Rugby Team, and the t-shirt is this is
This
the
one, like
monster.
you have to really look to get it, but some not
Oh,
everybody
I
gets
got
it.
it. I got it.
My nieces
Yes,
didn't get it because they don't know Sesame Street.
that's very good. It's a cookie in bed. Yeah, that's also a whole play on Monsters Incorporated as well.
Yeah,
I thought it
yeah.
was Monsters Inc. So today I've got this t-shirt was a gift from people.
What does it say under each one? Class
So
of?
it's class of 1977, and it's got
Very
each
nice.
of the characters from Star Wars.
Awesome.
Under under Vader, it says Major Dark Side Coaching. Under Chewbacca, it says Major Smuggling.
That's awesome. That's great.
So yeah, that was great. So today's question, are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be, I guess.
So this is a kind of I'd struggle with. This is pretty much word for word what he said, but I'm going to say the question and then I'm going to talk a bit about what I think he means. So the question is, when should I start working? I.e., how long does it take to have a job in society? Now, what I think he means by that question is, when do I really have to get a job? Like, can I just bum around until whatever age? Like, is there any pressure on me to actually get a job? Like, because when he asked me this, he said, could I just be like 40 years old and like just playing drums or something like that? Because he plays drums. And I was like, that's a really interesting question. When do you have to get a job? Hmm. Hold that thought. Let me write this down and I'll ask my friend Willem and see what he says. So I think the main thrust of the question is when should you get a job?
It's a funny way to put it. It's a funny way to look at life as well.
I
Uh,
it's a great teenager, right? Yeah.
Whenever you need to is one way to look at it. I mean, you just made me think of is it called Brothers? Yeah, I think it's called Brothers. The Will Ferrell and
Step Brothers.
Step
Yeah.
Brothers. Because they're
Will
40,
Ferrell,
they're
John C.
playing the
Reilly.
drums. They're happily playing the drums. 40 years old.
Of course.
They don't have
Yes.
jobs. They do get jobs afterwards. They find themselves to be entrepreneurs, but that's so. I don't know what your pupil is thinking of, but certainly in France we call them the Tanguy. Tanguy is the first name because there was a movie that came out years ago. I think there was a sequel. I didn't see that, but of exactly the trend of kids staying until really old at their parents and just like treating it like a hotel. Um, and the parent and the in the movie is that the kid is just doing an umpteen degree, living in his parents, and he's like 30 something, and the parents are just going wildly nuts, trying to do everything to get rid of him. um, and of course, the kid just doesn't get it. He doesn't. He's like, my parents love me. Why would they not want me with them? And they're like,
So
we want to have an empty nester's life. We've been taking care of you forever. It's enough. Just you need to go do your own life. So I don't know if that's what he was thinking of. But then um, there's the convention of society that would lead you to asking this kind of question in the first place.
I see. That's what I think. I think he's experiencing that pressure of the convention of society. Now that's probably a good starting point. What
And
do you think the
most of the
convention of
people
society?
and many artists altogether, musicians, just because you mentioned music,
Yeah, yeah.
tend to not have conventional lives and conventional side of society. Some do, some don't. Some have a job and practice their musical instrument on their off time, maybe even perform sometimes. You do
Mm.
music, right?
Yeah, now I play
Yeah.
guitar.
Yeah, you play guitar. You play guitar in your own time, and you have a regular job. A
That's
lot of
true.
people have that. Um, or a lot of people who want to be full time and live off of their art have maybe a part time job to just pay the rent and pay the bills and do a lot more with music. Or some others manage to get by a wide variety of various schemes. How many times did I say various? Did it really come across that it's like very, very,
Variety and various together.
yeah,
Yeah, it's good.
yeah. But I mean, just to point out that that's out of the convention. So out of the convention, there are no rules. You just like make do however you want to make do. Presumably, um, if you choose not to get a conventional job, I mean,
Hmm.
or like if you choose to pursue some kind of let's say art for the sake of ease, but it could be something
Yeah,
else, right?
yeah, yeah.
It could be your own business. It could be you want to make video games, whatever. It doesn't matter. You want to make do something that there's no immediate money coming to it. There
Hmm.
might be at some point, but there's no guarantee whatsoever. And you have proof of a very tiny, tiny, tiny minority of people who make it big and become celebrities or make a lot of money through a variety of like effort, talent, and luck,
Mm.
or chance or
Mm.
opportunity, whatever. Um, but there's absolutely no guarantee. So presumably whatever you're pursuing is more important than a standard, let's call it a standard way of life,
Hmm.
or standard comfort of life.
Hmm.
um yeah. So but when that's a fascinating question. I mean, my uncle is 60 something years old.
Yeah.
He's a musician. He still has, I don't think he's ever had or not for a very, very, very long time, had a regular job.
Oh wow.
He sells his music, and nowadays, and no, now there are, nowadays he is with someone regular. They have children. She has a job,
Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
for a very long time, now he manages through a variety of different schemes, let's call them.
Today's
Of,
word is variety for sure. You said
mhm.
it a lot today.
Yes, I don't know. I'm trying to look for synonyms of that one, but um, so anybody who doesn't have a regular job, you might either compromise on exactly what you're expecting as a regular standard of life, and by that I mean maybe the size of your apartment, or how
Mm.
central in a
Mm.
city it is, uh, or being able to go to the restaurant. Probably you
Mm.
won't be able to go to the restaurant on a regular basis, or you have another way to get it to have that money. There's a lot of people who pursue unconventional uh, activities, like things that are not a regular 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
And one thing that allows them to pursue that is having a partner who does have a job, and
I think it's
that's one of the
interesting.
most recurring ones. Not always, but it is a thing.
So you mean the person pursues whatever they want and then they have a partner who has a job, that kind of thing?
Yeah, the partner who has a job is the one that makes sure that knows every month the rent's going to be paid, the bills are going to be paid, because you, with your startup business, your music, your art, whatever it is, you're not bringing enough money on a regular basis, or not bringing enough money to on a regular basis for whatever the standard of living of the couple is.
Right, right, that makes sense. Because I think that this idea, the convention is, the 9 to 5 job.
Mhm.
I think that's changing. I think that, and this is something we talked about a lot, because of the
Yeah.
way the world is changing so much, you can't think in terms of, at least I don't think you can think in terms of get qualified, get a job, get married, get a house, have babies. Like it can't, you
I
have
mean,
to,
there's
I
still a
think,
lot of society encouraging you to do exactly that. So I don't think it's going to
yes,
disappear entirely. The
yeah.
emerging trend is still emerging. Sorry, I didn't let you finish your thought, perhaps.
No, yeah, but that's okay. The emerging trend is yeah, it is this emerging trend of, and I think the emerging trend is you have to know yourself. You have to be find something that's yours, Alan Watts, Ikigai, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah,
and
but
then that's
and the
that's kind
convention
of
doesn't really want the majority of society to go outside of the convention. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
yeah,
So, and even what I said, the emerging trend is, I don't know if it's emerging. I don't know how big it is. There's more talk to that in my bubbles,
hmm
in the conversation we're having. You're having those kinds of conversations. That doesn't mean that there's other bubbles where nobody's talking about that whatsoever.
mm
They're just going and doing their jobs, and they have no questioning as to, like, could they not do that? They're like, no, I go to my job, and
and come home.
they are married and they have children, and they were expected to do that young, and they did it young, and there's still a lot of people operating like that. And actually, this reminds me, by the way, for another. We might cover some of the same stuff in this episode, but I recently participated in a Facebook Live of the Sweathead
Oh,
podcast. Sweathead is an online community of a lot of different people, and a really popular podcast by Mark Pollard. Mark Pollard is a dude who does the same. I mean, he has the same work as me, but he's done a lot more in terms of thinking and practicing and teaching marketing strategy and teaching thinking, which is why
mm
it's called Sweathead. And he interviews a lot of people in the industry, and I participated in that episode with a few other people. It was a panel conversation about freelancing
oh wow,
in a
that's great.
time where probably there's more and more people looking at that kind of different lifestyle, either because they've been recently laid off because of COVID, or there's more people working from home and thinking about, maybe doing their own thing. So as we were just saying, there's a lot more um, talk about that, presumably. So we had a four-way conversation with three freelancers on what does it actually take? What is the reality of it?
This is great because I think this pupil's question was looking for understanding of alternatives.
Mhm.
Like he's trying to understand, are there other ways of working but still have sustaining himself without his parents?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
it's not talked about very much.
But
The
but
idea
but
of
you might still have to
talk
get a
about,
job. It's
yeah,
also being willing to do anything that you need to, and that job might be more of a job to what is considered to be just paying the bills while you pursue something else than a career job. So I don't know, doing part time at Starbucks or something.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, I think it's
Something that
interesting you
is at
say
least
that.
considered to not be too demanding, and that
Right. So
that
you
that
still
make
have
you, yeah.
the headspace to be able to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, at
It's
least that's the idea.
because it's interesting because I do
Like
feel like
waiting tables for people who want to be actors. It's, it's a trope, but it's true.
yeah, it is. Because I feel like being a teacher affords me, and being the stage that I'm at as a teacher and being good enough as in my career to be able to handle what I need to handle
Yeah.
affords me the time to be able to explore things like this podcast, things
Yes.
like doing a video every week, things
A
like
lot of
writing.
people who have creative endeavors go into teaching. A lot of people who want to be writers go into teaching because
Oh, really?
they're going to be thinking and writing, and probably, presumably, or at least hopefully have time on the side. Uh, to be clear, and you can speak more to this. Anybody who thinks they have the whole vacation and everything else and lots of time when you're a teacher, that's
no,
not the case, because you're
it's
supposed
not
to
good.
spend full days taking care of admin and students, and nobody's paying you or telling you you probably need to grade and prepare all your classes at some other point, undetermined somehow.
Yeah, Yeah,
So you're doing what from what time to what time are your classes?
so yeah, school starts at 8:30 and then finishes at 4 p.m.
So you're usually there from 8:30, at least 8, I would imagine, 8,
Yes.
8:30 to 4 or 5 PM.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
already
usually
more than
lunchtime.
an 8-hour day. And that is teaching time. So your class is already ready and it takes time to prepare them. Presumably you've been teaching for a while, so it takes you less time perhaps.
Yeah.
But it
Well,
takes a lot
I'm
of
not
time in the beginning.
teaching. Yeah, and I'm not teaching every chunk of the day. There's spaces in the day where you've got to. But this is the thing. It's not Murphy's law.
Yeah, but
Which
between preparing, my point is between preparing and grading, you can't do that in that chunk of time that you're at school.
you could do some of it, yeah, but you can't do all of it. That's true. But then, what's the law where work expands to fill the time allotted for it?
Oh, that's a good one. I can't remember the name.
I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
remember
yeah,
what it
for
is.
sure.
And teachers have got to be, and this is one of the reasons I do things like this conversation with you, this podcast, because if I do other stuff, it means I have to finish my day job. If I didn't have the other stuff, my like teaching is one of those jobs that can take over your whole life and become everything if you don't cultivate other things. If
Yeah.
you don't cultivate other interests, it will just splurge everywhere. And I didn't want it to be that. I don't want it to be that because, and I think my teaching is better for it because I do other stuff because I bring that to the classroom. So it's a, and then some part of me does think is because I enjoy teaching, thinking about this a lot, that it's not really work. I mean, there are some aspects of being a teacher that are like, marking, yeah. But the experience of being in the classroom preparing lessons, I really enjoy it. It stops being like a job and starts being something fulfilling that I'm doing.
Oh, true. That and I was not talking necessarily of whether it was painful or not, but it does take time. So that is something to be taken
That's
into
true.
account. And when you're talking about the expanding amount of time, and when you're freelancing, living an independent life, while like you're not employed,
Yeah.
that does that a lot. I mean, just it's so easy to be distracted by things. So easy to be distracted by things. And you are, by the way, it's not that you're not distracted in the same fashion if you say work in an office 9 to 5, but
Yeah.
working in an office 9 to 5, you're paid even if you get distracted for 2 hours, you're paid the same amount. Now I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
technically I am too, which is like my standard is 0 unless I have work going on. Um, I mean by that, if I'm meant to either finish a project, the longer I take to finish the project, the less money I'm making possibly somewhere else because there's
Oh,
time.
okay. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you could see it that way, right? I don't usually
Yeah.
look at
I
it
never
that
thought
way,
of it that way.
but yeah, no, I mean, I just finished a contract with a client, and it depends how you work, and we talk about that in the freelance conversation. Really dig into like money, how to manage a time, projects, etc. But if I agree on a price for a project,
Hmm.
the longer I spend on it, the less I'm paid per hour, specifically, like technically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, or if I'm between jobs, or if I'm still like looking, and you still need to be somehow doing things to look for other projects.
Yeah. So
If I
there's
get
delivering the
distracted for
project and
hours,
there's
I'm not
finding
doing
it as
that.
well. Yeah.
And I'm not always doing it at all. And part of the pleasure and the advantage of being freelance, and I'm taking this in a little different, but this is a tangent, it's fine, is to be able to have that time, is to be able to say I organized to go see a museum exhibit on Friday morning because I can. Um, I can also afford to technically waste a lot of time doing other things. It's never time wasted, except that I also think, oh, I should be really, progressing on my series of articles to think about my job, and I haven't done that. I haven't sent any emails to anybody to say like, what's going on. I'm looking for another contract and I'm available, so I probably need to do that again. Um,
But that
yeah,
aspect of managing time and having the time to do what you want to do is what I think this people is trying to get at. And I think
yeah.
that
You think?
yeah, I do. Like he wants the freedom to do what he wants to do, but he appreciates that he's going to need to take care of himself, and he's going to need to the usual way of sustaining yourself and taking care of yourself is getting a job.
Yeah.
So he's
I mean, you can find a patron. There's other ways. Um, but yes, that is usually the kind of that's usually. And then the other big question is, what does he want or need? What are his ambitions? That's another good thing to
oh,
look
that's
at.
yeah, yeah.
How
But I
much do you
think
need? Because the less you need, the less money you need, the easier it is to get by to pursue some other thing.
now
Do you
that
want to
that's
go on vacation in a 5-star hotel? I mean, and I'm talking about this like assuming we're not in the middle of a crazy pandemic that nobody can travel anyway. But and that
this
jobs are going to be harder to come by, and that we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but that we never know that. But anyway, um, and that even for actors, I mean, there's not a lot of productions going on. The cinema industry is bust at the moment. All the movies that are supposed to be released are pushed. I was reading an article about just the catastrophe of Tenet and all the other movies that are terrified to launch their big blockbusters at the moment because nobody's going to see them.
yeah, yeah.
Now, it didn't help that Tenet got really disastrous reviews as well.
Well, I
I
mean,
didn't see it. Did you
I
see
haven't
it?
seen it. I know
Yeah.
I wouldn't
I heard it
mind
was
seeing
very
it.
bad by 3 people that I know well, and I'm like, "Ugh."
So I heard a pupil tell me it was really good, but yeah, it was that kind of vibe. I heard someone else say, as a piece of cinema, it's amazing. Plot, like I don't know, it's what is rubbish. It doesn't mean anything. So
So what does that mean that it's a piece of cinema? It's amazing though. If it's
like
like the photography,
visually stunning, like the special
but
effects.
in that case, isn't it better? So that's my. I almost went and I was talking about it with my brother-in-law, and my cousin, who were like, I said, so is it still worth? Should I see it? Because you were talking about it again, and it's still Christopher Nolan. It's the big thing. There's nothing. There's not really any blockbusters to see right now.
Bill
And
and
they were like,
Ted.
seriously, do not waste. I mean,
Oh
as you wish,
wow,
but it's really a waste of 2.5 hours of your life. Like seriously,
wow, a waste of 2.5 hours of your life.
you could
Wow.
watch. There's a lot of other great movies that you haven't seen yet that have come out a while ago that you should probably watch first. And
Wow.
it is true.
Wow.
There's tons of gems and blockbusters and mainstays of cinema that I still haven't seen, and that they were like, yeah, you should definitely like anything that you've not seen that is a good movie for sure. You should watch that rather than Tenet.
Wow, that's really interesting. I want to go back to what you said about ambition though, because
Yes.
the
That takes us a little
ambition.
bit closer to our topic.
Well, I've got two things to add to. Well, three things
Sure.
actually. The first thing is the knowing your ambition. So that means you kind of like, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to contribute? And then kind of thinking backwards, or like, what do I need to do? That's one bit. But the other bit you said was about lifestyle. Do I want to go on holidays where I go and stay in a 5-star hotel? Do I want to have the kind of life where I own my own home? Do I want to like travel the like what?
Yeah.
Then
What makes you happy? If you're happy playing video
yeah.
games in a basement, you probably don't need as much money as somebody else who wants to go to 3 Michelin star restaurants and hang out in the countryside club in the weekend somewhere in Oxford. Sure, I guess.
But when you say that, you then have to start. It's interesting. I think it's an interesting exercise for a teenager or for someone doing it at school, one of my pupils, to start thinking, if I want to live that life, how much money will I need to actually cost it out and think? I think it'd be really interesting for them to think about, because when
Yeah,
they
I
start
don't.
digging into
I
it, they'll
mean,
start
you're
realizing,
thinking
like,
of
oh wow.
costing things out and working them back. When I was talking about ambition, although you're right, I wasn't even thinking that. I was just thinking of like, how do you imagine your life to be, and what makes you happy, and what do you like, what do you derive pleasure from? And I'm not saying you have to live as a well. And usually, anybody who's pursuing something like a startup or art, or they're kind of just maniacal about it, just
Yeah.
really focused. And it's one of the things that I am not generally. It's not. I am enough to get by. Like Mark that I was just talking about, who has the Sweathead podcasts. I've
Yeah.
occasionally been looking at him, going, "Oh my God, he's doing all those things that I should be doing. He's doing them so much better than I am. He's much better than me, and why do I bother doing what I'm doing?" And in the conversation I had with him when he was on my podcast, he told me after our recording, as an example, and this is just a small anecdotal
Yeah.
example, that sometimes he was interviewing and recording 20 interviews a week, in addition to having a wife and 2 kids and whatever else he was committed to and had going on work-wise. And I was like, "Oh, I don't do that at all." Don't do I have not put as much time in my podcasts at all. And I've probably put more time into editing and finagling with sound and things that don't really produce the result. And he, he's done stuff beforehand and he's just published his first book, which is like beautiful, on Kickstarter. There's 13 the community he created. Started it like a couple years ago, and there's 13 or 14,000 members on the Facebook group now. He's
Wow.
he's prolific. Like he's on top of things, like very, very, very serious about it. And before even he started all of that, he had like a really thriving career. He still does, but on his own right now. As in, before that, he was working for big ad agencies. He While he was working for ad agencies, he had recorded classes on how to do my job on Skillshare and videos and things like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's a dedication and a commitment to producing things beyond, above and beyond what the normal scope of things are, that I've had a very different lifestyle. I've preferred, and I still do, and I have to remind myself of what is it I'm trying to do. I prefer to go and spend time scuba diving on an island and 6 weeks skiing and having a coffee or drinks with a friend one on one, not recording anything, just hanging out. I've done a lot more of that, and I've done a lot more of like going back to see my nieces and nephews and my
Yeah.
brothers and my parents and friends, and that's where my focus has been. And
It
having
does
enough
beg
to
the
get by,
question: how does he do
and
it?
having enough to do what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And
is
sometimes
he like?
no, sometimes not enough. This year, again, kind of worrying about everything going on money wise because of COVID. But I'm still living in a nice apartment in central Paris,
Yeah.
which is probably unreasonable for the amount of money I'm making. But I'm still working out for now, so I'll just do that.
There's a
I don't know if
trust,
that helps the
and
question directly, but
I think it does in the sense that there's a if you're clear about the kind of life you want to live, you can live that. But it takes something, and there's a level of
and
trust,
there's
and
also a danger in looking at, and it's a reminder of the danger and insanity to look at social media too much.
but I want to talk about that in a second. But there's a level of trust with the way you do things, in the way things work out, the way you make things work out
Mhm.
because of what you need, that I think is really cool.
It's funny. I had a conversation with students on Friday about exactly that. Well, students and grads, and I'm participating in a program called Coffee at a Distance. If you Google Coffee at a Distance, students, you will find it. And there's mentors that have signed up to be available to organize this kind of Zoom conversation. Sorry, to give advice about the creative communications industry.
Oh wow.
And I was catching up on a bunch, and so I bunched up four and back to back, and then I thought, well, I all gave you my Zoom account, so if you want to show up before or after and just make this a group thing, I'm fine with that. Why not? So
Mm.
most of them did. Most of them, I kind of still gave them. There was 30 minutes each, and I kind of gave them a highlight on one person for 30 minutes mostly. Um, but but they were very curious, and one of the reasons they wanted to talk to me was
Mhm.
working abroad. Was how did you manage to create that lifestyle where you seem to do these things that don't seem to be, and it's a very good question. I'm like, yeah, I just made it work the way I wanted. uh and I have a hard time doing saying anything else than crediting probably my parents in the way they raised me and some of the personal development courses I've participated in. um and then I guess some kind of belief that I'm like, at least one person does that out there, so it's got to be possible. Why not me?
Yeah. And yet you still compare yourself to this guy, Mark Pollard, who's like prolific and probably like, do you think he follows like deep work principles, or is he just super obsessed with what he does and loves it?
I don't know. You'd have to ask him that.
It's interesting.
Probably a bit of both.
Yeah. Yeah. Now this point you mentioned about social media and
It's a good
comparison,
question though.
I we watched.
And by the way, this reminds
Yeah,
me of last year when I was having exactly those thoughts about Mark.
you
That I
were,
don't know
weren't
if
you?
I don't know that he knows that. I didn't tell him that at all. But anyway, if ever he comes onto this video, he'll know, I guess. Exactly then that I was kind of that you had sent me this article about social media dangers, and I think it was in the Guardian, if I'm not mistaken, about just about the anxiety coming through with like looking at people's lives or imagining this is what people's lives are, and always. Sorry, I'll let you speak, and I'll come to the rest of my idea.
What I'm about to say totally relates to
Okay,
what you're saying.
I thought
So
so. So just I'll let you go.
yeah, the we watched. I've had a couple of people recommend me on Netflix The
Oh,
Social
that new doc.
Dilemma.
I heard about it. I haven't watched it yet. I heard it was very good.
Yeah, we watched it. We watched it last night, and it's pretty scary. Now,
Everything I
I
read about social media is scary, and now everything I read about and listen to about business, and by business entirely, I mean the big four, and I mean everything that's going on is scary at the moment. And now I'm starting to teach students, and I'm wondering, okay, how do I convey this? And it was interesting. The conversation last week about politics was interesting too.
yeah,
Um, yeah. Anyway, so it's the drive of these businesses is forwarding and promoting stuff that is actually unhealthy for people,
yeah, that's exactly what we
and
talk
they
about in
make
that
money on
documentary.
that. I mean,
That's
they is
exactly,
Mark Zuckerberg and Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and all the other apps. It's just crappy behaviors, and of course, we want to portray and convey a certain aspect of our life. But what we see on social media, what you look at through the Instagram is only a reflection of what somebody shared on Instagram. It's not
yeah,
you don't know how they're feeling. You don't know what's going on through their heads.
yeah,
You don't know what it is they want. You don't know what it is they're struggling with in their heads. But I remember one part of that article that I read was I don't know if they cover the same kind of idea, was this idea that it's normal to compare yourself, but there's just not so much opportunity to do so before. You could compare yourself to your neighbor, to the other
yeah,
people at school,
yep,
and feel
yep,
anxious about, what's going
yep,
on at high school with the people that are popular, not popular, which is one thing. But now there's everybody in the world, and everybody in the
yes,
it's like this experience of every single person in the world crashing on your doorstep, and everybody, you spend so much time worrying and thinking about that, or you can anyway. And I've kind of like purposefully stopped a little bit and gone, you know what, this is just what, why am I even doing this? So I'm much less on Twitter, much less on Facebook. I'm still scrolling occasionally and just having a quick look, answering and replying to a few people on Twitter, wishing people's happy birthday, wishing people happy birthday on Facebook, etc. But yeah, I don't know.
and here we are doing a live stream on
I know
YouTube.
exactly, and
Like
I don't
it's
know how to. I mean, yeah, here we are doing a live stream on Facebook, and I've made my living mostly from just being a servant to this system and advising people on how to communicate, generally speaking, in a way that is going to be perpetuating selling things that people don't need,
yeah,
to improve their lifestyle image. And generally speaking, there's a lot of advertising is at fault before even social media, right?
yeah,
To promote a really glamorous
yeah,
idea that, wow, your life will be so much better, happier, and sexier if you have this thing.
yeah.
Um, I saw that was fascinating. Thursday after my classes, I went to see my cousin at my cousin's an artist actually, and he has got away in the super famous artist gallery in Squat on Rue de Rivoli in the center of Paris, right next to the town hall. It's been an artist squat for 20 years, and it's now official. Like it's
Wow.
condoned, but it's a place that has a fascinating history because it's been there for 20 years, and it's like in one of the most central and viewed places in Paris. And he managed to get last year a residency as an artist there, and he'd applied for it, and they accepted him. And then once he got accepted, he realized how much of a big deal it was. Like thousands and thousands of people want to be in that place. It's
Yeah.
super. It's famous worldwide. It's not everybody gets in at all. So now he's part of that club. Anyway, so I went to see him because he was taking care of holding the door and welcoming people. And it was on my way back. But and I arrived there, and there was a huge line of people across the street, like going into this little street. And he was like, hey, look at what's going on over there. I'm like, oh yeah, what is going on? He's like, I don't know what's going on. Why are they queuing? I'm like, I'll just go and ask. Which was already a thing, by the way, which is also an expression of, you just go, that shakable belief to go do things is
Yeah.
to keep practicing. And at first my cousin was like, and this is kind of a side story, but this is what happened. My cousin was like, oh, no, you don't need to go and ask them. Listen, you don't need to go and ask
But
them.
you want to know, why would you not go and ask?
But I was like, no, it's not. I just cross the street. Just all it takes is the courage to feel a little bit silly to go
Yeah.
and ask somebody, a stranger,
Yeah.
what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, it still feels weird, but I have practice doing that. And that kind of practice also leads to go, you know what? I think I can work on a beach. Why not? Um,
Yeah.
so
That's
anyway,
great.
I went to ask, and this lady says, well, there's the new pop-up shop for AliExpress, which is the Alibaba website. It's kind of the Chinese Amazon,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And I'm like, what? AliExpress, Alibaba? Oh, really? I didn't even know they had I didn't even know
I
the
didn't know that
AliExpress
either.
shop. I'm like, what? And they were like, yeah, it's their first kind of showroom shop in Paris. I'm like, oh, is there a special promotional day? They're like, I don't know, maybe. Okay. What do they sell? Everything? Okay. And I got back to explain that to my cousin and checked. He was like, what is they sell? I'm like, just everything cheap.
Everything?
Everything for cheap. And it started raining like crazy. People were still queuing to get in that thing. And this
Was
is
it like
not
a
even
small
not the new
space or was it a
iPhone
big
or no.
space?
It's just a new showroom shop. They're testing the market. I saw an article afterwards. But my thinking, when my cousin, he's much younger, but he was also thinking. I mean, I was like, just people are queuing on the street to go buy what? Just random stuff. And I'm not saying don't buy random stuff, but it's the level of dedication and commitment to just, I don't know. I find it super weird.
But what was it in? What was even in there? So you're buying stuff that you don't even know if you want that they might have.
I think it
Because
was just everything from like Muji, from a range of, there's like cosmetics to a few clothes to some electronics to, I don't know.
wow, wow,
And presumably because
AliExpress.
of COVID and because of the success of that thing, there's just a gigantic queue outside. Oh, because COVID, because they're limiting the amount of people in the store, right?
Oh yeah. Wow. So instead of going online, you go to a shop to get what you could get online.
Yeah, but from a marketing standpoint, or branding, presumably, I mean, this is where my head goes at. So, and Amazon did exactly the same thing. Once you've eliminated every single possible competitor, and the center of the town, the high street, and the really
There's nothing
prone
there.
locations are gone, and nobody's got money to afford them, then you can be Amazon or Alibaba and go, well, I'm just going to take this showroom shop that is it's basically a massive ad for my online business.
Oh wow. Okay, and it doesn't even have to be there for very long.
That's like when Amazon opened bookshops in the States.
Yeah.
I mean, they just
Yeah.
killed every single competitor, and then they were like, great, well, now we can open bookshops just for the sake of it. We don't need to. It's just so that, well, we can afford it. So let's do it. And we've just killed every single competitor out there. So we'll just make this space where it's kind of like a physical space that people can go look at books and have a coffee. They don't care if they sell books or not. It's just an ad. They probably care, but not really.
It
Scary.
is just an ad. Yeah, a shop becomes an ad. Wow. Not the actual experience itself.
Well, the Apple, no, but it is the experience is part of the ad.
Okay. Oh, you
The
mean like the
experience
Apple
is part of
Store?
it. Yeah, like the Apple Store, you're providing an experience of what the brand is and what the products are.
Okay, I get it. Yeah, yes, that makes sense. Yeah. Oh man.
So,
That's you just
no,
scared
no,
me
no.
again.
Huh?
Yeah, but I think
So, but we can tangent it back to your ambitions. So there are a small amount of extremely wealthy people and or corporations, usually a few people that are either invested in it or at the head of them. And that, as part of a system and a convention of society, will want you to have a job so that you can perpetuate the existence of those corporations. And now, I mean, we're clearly going back into the territory of the politics from last week, right?
But I think it's interesting to think
But it's a
about
different perspective.
it is.
It
It is
doesn't
different
mean that
perspective.
it's wrong to have a job, and there are people that are genuinely interested in their jobs, or there are also people genuinely interested in what's going out of their jobs, and they have a satisfying job, and that from an ambition perspective, I do have friends who are either like their jobs or like their jobs enough that they're happy to go do the 9 to 5, and they do that, and they got friends and colleagues they hang out with, and they have enough money so that they can pursue the rest of their passion outside of work, and that might be a hobby like role-playing games.
Mm,
And they read, and they have enough money to buy role-playing games, they have enough money to go on vacation once or twice a year, and to gaming conventions other times in the year, and they can't they're enjoying their jobs. That's fine. And technically, yes, they are part of the cohorts of people making the company richer, but they're fine with that aspect of the deal because they enjoy the job and they got enough time for the rest of it to do their passion, and it works out for them.
yeah.
um but if you want to do something unconventional, well, so actually, if you turn it back to the question of time, how long do I have before I have to do that? As long as you want. It depends what you want.
I
And if
keep
you want money now, you might as well try to get a job now. The more experience
well,
you have
yeah.
in a variety of things, you might as well just get a job. Why wait?
This is what I was
And by
wondering
the way,
about
like,
when
it
he.
might sound critical of me to say that you're engrossing a system by doing a job. It's not that it's wrong to do that. It's great to have a lot of different job experiences. I've had a lot of different job experiences. As soon as I started, I mean, I worked a little bit on the markets when I was in high school, a little bit, but then from my first year in university, I had a regular job. I mean, it was part time. I was teaching
Mm,
English to small kids, and I was working 2 days a week, something like that. And then I worked in a bar the following year, and I've done a bunch of jobs. It's good. Doing jobs teaches you a lot of different things,
yeah, you
and you
get to
get some money.
experience life and people and
Yeah.
money and that. Yeah, yeah.
So I would say don't wait. Don't. Why would you want to wait until you get a job?
It does make me wonder what was underneath his question. Was it
Mhm.
like the and this is what's it's not it's quite cool to speculate about what he might have been asking. The is it
Maybe
was
it's
it
something to
a
do with his parents. I don't know.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is it something to do with his parents? Is it something to do with not wanting to break away from the convention? Was it a genuine, I don't know what I want to do with my life? Was it I want to just do, I want to play drums and not do anything else? I don't, or is it, I don't really care. I'm just going to like follow things as they go and explore, go on an adventure.
On the
Who
drums,
knows?
there's a friend of my brother's. He's a guitar player, although he does some drums as well. He's a musician. When they lived together, I don't even know how he wrangled some of the money. I think some of the money came from his parents, maybe some just from random music gigs, bits and pieces. He didn't have any money,
Hmm.
but he just played the guitar all day. And now I think he lives in a van and travels, goes surfing in Portugal, and does gigs. Gets enough money to pay his gas, and has enough friends to stay at a few places and spots here and there on couches and whatever. Uh, and that's his lifestyle.
Hmm. There's no one
He's
way to do
happy. He's a
life.
nice
Yeah.
guy. I don't know. Maybe in the winter he goes back to his parents for a couple of months. I'm making this up. I don't know if that's true. I don't think so. But maybe it's possible. Um, and he's in his mid 30s now, and he's a really good musician.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no,
But that's what he spent his time on.
but that's what I'm just getting from what you're saying. There's no one way to do life. It's entirely up
No.
to you.
Yeah.
You can explore and create whatever you like, and then
Yeah,
you
it
know,
might,
so
and it sounds like there is, because a lot of people beginning with your parents will have a certain opinion about what you should do and
yeah,
how
they
life
do.
should look, and you might have a variety of different rhetorics from, when you're 18, you'll do whatever you want as long as you're under my house, my rules, or things like that, which of course you deal with when you're a teenager, and
Yeah.
even up to your early 20s, perhaps. And if you don't want, if you take that to heart, then you're like, great, I'll just take a job and leave. I did that. My brother did that, and actually, most people aspired to do that, wanted to do that in the past.
What do you mean,
Actually,
like
that's
just
aspired
get
to
a
get
job
out of your
and move
parents'
out?
house and to have
Okay,
your
okay,
own
okay.
money and your own thing. So that was like one of the actually in the modern romance book I read, that was one of the reasons that people got married young. And for a lot of women at the time, because that's changing, although there's countries where it's still true, the
Hmm.
way to get out of your parents' house and have some independence that was different was to get married fast.
I
Um,
didn't. You see, I didn't want that until much later. I think
but
yeah. You see,
did you not want to get a job and get out of your parents' house? Is that what you mean?
not until actually thinking about it, it wasn't really until I met Davina, who's my wife now. And I met her when I was 25. Up until that point, I was quite happy living at home and earning my money. And then because I had the big concern about like, okay, I didn't want to rent. If I want to buy, where I get the money from? Like, and this is coming off for 20 years ago. So the but
Yeah,
what
a lot
being
of
with
other people.
Davina
Yeah,
allowed me the resources for us to work together to be able to create what we wanted. And
yeah,
that
that
was
happens a lot too. But I mean, I had the example of my older brother who left early, and
mhm,
then it's absolutely circumstantial, but it happened that we were evicted from our apartment. And we were evicted from our apartment, so there was no, and we had been already, and we'd moved a bunch of times. There was not a
yeah.
family home for me to stay in. And I was like, well, this is not, my parents can't afford to, I can't, I did until then. And I was what, I was 21, 20, 21.
Mhm.
Um, and then they got another apartment where I could stay, but, I was already like, well, I need to obviously fend for myself. Let's.
What was that like? Was it a choice? Was it a conscious like, okay, now I need to, or it was like a all thing did it just emerge? Were you
What do
pushed
you
by
mean?
circumstances? I mean,
I mean,
like,
that's what I meant. I was pushed by circumstances.
okay, okay. So and
Now, of
then
course, it was already part of my idea that I wanted to be independent anyway. I didn't want to be living off of my parents. And
mm,
obviously my parents were struggling. So it was like, that was not an option. And it became not an option at all when we were evicted from a house.
that see my when my parents came, but my parents came to the UK and living in London, the idea of losing, like being evicted, or because was the ultimate nightmare. So
I'm sure.
they were always very,
And by the way,
really
there's a lot of that going on right now.
a lot of being
Evictions.
evictions.
I just watched
Can't pay their
a
rent.
segment from the Daily Show, and there's a lot of. So actually, no, I watched a segment in the media, and this is like on the talking about the stuff that is just a little bit, if not absolutely revolting about humanity.
Yeah,
So there's right now is the period. There's a lot of people in the U.S. getting evicted
yeah.
before winter, and because of COVID. Uh, and so there is a new startup that started to make evictions easier. So it's kind of the Uber of evictions. So you can
I did see a clip about this. Yeah,
employ
haven't watched
people
it
for
though.
cheap, like you would an Uber driver, through an app to help
Yeah.
move out and get rid of people. It's dark,
So
and so yeah,
landlords can pay people as part of the gig economy to evict people who are on their property. Wow.
something like that. Yeah, I didn't. I just watched that yesterday night. I didn't look at it any further.
Oh man.
And that's
That
probably a startup that got funding by venture capital. Anyway, yeah.
because
The gig economy is scary as well. That's terrifying. When you look at it closely, Uber Eats, Deliveroo, Uber,
yeah,
those companies that are valued at billions and billions
yeah.
and billions of dollars, fighting tooth and nail to get all the rules like they want through politics, to pay nobody and to pay everybody less than minimum wage. that they're working with, and while working to eliminate the need for workers altogether. And that's like the easiest opportunities there are for people who don't have jobs, is to be a gig economy person, to go drive for Uber or whatever.
I remember reading
And
Fast
you're
Food
really just
Nation.
you're worse than a cog. It's like the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, reading Fast Food Nation. The fast food industry is very much like that. If they can eliminate people, they would. People just below at minimum wage doing the simplest thing, just like moving one whatever it is.
Yeah.
You the cog in the wheel. Yeah.
And we still have a lot of people fulfilling those jobs. I mean, anyway, whatever.
But could you do that? Could you do that job and then have other things like that? You'll be an artist and be an Uber driver or whatever.
It depends. Some of them are better than others. So driving for Uber probably can get you a little bit of money, but it takes a long time, and it takes all your attention. It doesn't take all your mental attention, but you have to be there driving. You can't do anything else while you're doing that, and it takes a long time to get the right kind of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's easy to do, easy to pick up. Yeah, I maybe it works for you. I don't know.
But it is the whole profit motive, chasing profit motive, and it was in that documentary, The Social Dilemma, as well. That a lot of it comes down to the financial incentives. If it's about making profit, then and my attention is what they're getting, it's pretty scary what's happening. And to go back to that thing about the eviction, that idea of being moved from your home was so frightening for my parents coming to this country, that having a family home, having your own home, was super duper important.
Yeah.
So the idea of my parents actually downsizing their home because their children aren't there, they wouldn't even consider that. They still want to keep their house because that's their home. That's the family home.
But
That's
it
our
tells you a
roots.
lot about what's, and I totally understand. And I don't know. I mean, I can't say that my parents operated like that, but that's also where, I mean, I can only get that I got my idea that you can do things like that from them. Because that's how they live their life. Also, there was also a whole large side of it that was leading it arguably irresponsibly financially. And you could argue that I am irresponsible too financially. I mean, I feel I'm responsible, but I'm living with a level of risk that is unacceptable to a lot of people.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I would find that challenging. I wouldn't be able to do that. And then, but I've always been intrigued by people who know their background, know their roots, and have that security to be able to do whatever it is they want to do. Like there's someone I know, he can trace his ancestry back. He did well, there's two people I know actually. One of them did the genetic test, like you get where you're from, and he could trace his entire ancestry to one village in Ireland. That's one guy I know. And another guy I know, his family have been farming the land in Ireland for generations and generations. Like they have this deep connection with the land and who they are and the village and everything that's built up around that I just don't feel. I don't feel like I have like connection with anything like patriotism or anything like that. They're both really patriotic people, really aware of who they are in their country. I'm just not like that at all.
Yeah, no, I'm not particularly.
I always feel like well, who am I? Where do I fit in? What's going on? And I think having that kind of strong foundation of who you are, where you fit in, like where your background is, allows you to take the risks. Now, how you live is completely like, to me, I couldn't do it. But you're quite like, yeah, it'll be fine. And I wonder
I worry about it. It's not that I don't worry about it. Sometimes, and particularly this year, I mean, I go through phases of being okay with my choices, and then this year is, and we've talked about this before, but it is real challenging on worrying about things.
And then circumstances, both of us have had some challenging circumstances in the past like few weeks, months.
Sure.
That have just shifted. They've certainly shifted my focus about like what life is about.
True.
So with the pupils I teach, I'm sure that they want to have discussions like this. They want to be able to ask somebody like me or you, like, what's it like? Or how did you, whatever, or blah. And they just don't get the opportunity to do that. They really
But
don't.
that, see,
And that's
that's
why
one
we're
thing
here.
that, yeah, that is why we're here. And I wonder, as a, well, for future questions, if it would be useful, because everything we're talking about, particularly for younger ones, so the high school students that you're teaching, probably, that even well, possibly even older ones, depending on exactly what the
Like the
environment
ones
is,
you're teaching.
like the ones I'm teaching. But
Yeah.
there's probably a lot of questions to, or a lot of that relates directly back to conversations with parents. Because whatever the outcome of the question that you have, we already just surmised on, well, there's something to do with the parents there.
Good point.
And I know a lot of people, I think, or at least imagine, that if you'd go up to your parents and say, I really thought about it and I want to live in a van and go play music, parents are like, no, just you're going to go degree and get a job.
Some parents might be like, fine, yeah.
Some parents might be fine, but some parents are not going to be, and some
Unlikely.
parents are going to like have more or less wider open options on, being able to discuss what their child wants, and how to navigate those conversations with parents might be an interesting topic. I don't know if you had any questions around that, but because that's what
Not yet.
it does lead me to
Not
wondering about
yet.
this particular question.
Yeah, no.
How much time, like, how much time can I spend dialing around? I'm like, well, it's as long as you want, as long as you're not bored of it, you just keep doing that. And as we
And
said,
it's
I mean, circling back to the beginning, stepbrothers seem to be perfectly happy doing that when they're 40. So, it depends how much pain you want to inflict on your parents as well.
I don't know, like
They
some
love
Asian,
you, but at some point they're going to go, come on, please, please go and live your own life.
I don't know. Some Asian parents might, there's a bit of a stereotype of like, staying
It
at
is a
home
bit of a
with your
stereotype, but
parents.
it's not necessarily untrue. But there's also a point where, actually, that might be a conversation for your parents. There's a point where they might go, yeah, maybe if you'd stayed here until you were 40, maybe I would have wanted you to go, but I probably wouldn't have admitted to that.
I mean,
I don't know.
the relationship with parents is a really powerful one. Maybe we'll get asked
Yes.
about that because I get on so well with my parents, and it's taken me admitting how much of a pain in the backside I can be and owning that to actually get to the point where I can tell my parents I love them, whatever happens. And it doesn't matter whether they tell me or not. I don't really care about that. I know they do, but having the freedom to be able to say it for me was a huge deal. But they've become. Have you heard of something called the sandwich generation? Have
No,
you heard of
or
that?
it doesn't ring a bell. No, what's that?
So the sandwich generation are this generation where they've got children, but they're having to take care of their older parents as well.
Oh, yeah.
So they're under pressure from both sides.
Yeah, that's what,
And
yeah. I mean, we've got that going on. I don't have children, but my brothers are in that category.
yeah, so I'm really open. My parents are so like open about getting old because they had to deal. We're still dealing with my one of my grandparents is still alive, who's in a care home. So as much as it's got to the stage where my parents are like, I tell my mum and my dad, you don't need to worry about me and my sister. We can handle stuff. It's okay. They're still thinking about like one of my grandparents, but then I'm thinking, and we're talking about they're getting old. They're preparing for when they get really old, whatever care they might need. So it's to be able to have those kinds of conversations with my parents, I think is amazing that I
Yeah.
can do that. I'm so I feel so like again, it's the personal development work that I've done, we both done that's made a big difference to that. To be able to tell my parents, tell my dad especially, you need to slow down because if you don't, you're going to hurt yourself. And he takes it on board. Never would have happened 5, 10 years ago, or even 20. Actually, wouldn't happen 20 years ago. I was too angry with my dad all the time. But that being able to go back to the question of like when do I need to really get a job? Parental expectations are probably underneath a lot of the questions I get asked. I'm gonna when I get back to school, I will actually ask for more questions and say,
Yeah.
Is that being driven by your parents? Are you like what's happening? And it'd be interesting to see, because I think we could
Yeah.
have a whole episode
So I
about
think
that.
that's the three main things. If it's driven by the parents, so there's more conversations to be had. If it's you want to do something else, then there's no time as long as you want. Or if you're worried about getting a job, just get one now so that you'll find out how it is.
And there we go. Venomous said what could have been said at the beginning, summed up in 3 easy steps. But we had to go through all the tangents to get to this point. That's how
Yes,
it works.
exactly. All right.
Perfect
Thank you,
timing.
guys.